Today it's my honor to bring together scientists, stewards, and storytellers and grassroots leaders, comments, and presenters on the topic of agroforestry systems for climate resilience and food system.
And many times we think about climate change in terms of drought or floods, but I would really emphasize the problem of rising temperatures. And there's a lot of research to show that for every degree of increased temperature, there is a decrease in crop yields.
Because humans, we are so greedy that we just focus on what we need. And we forget that nature, to provide you that, you have to feed it. Nitrogen fixation, biomass production, stratification, biodiversity, and all this.
Peter, if you are ready, you'll give us an introduction and take us through your presentation that you prepared today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and welcome to everyone. My name is Peter Gubbels. I work with Groundswell in West Africa, and I'm based in Ghana, but work in a region in Senegal, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Senegal. And I have only 15 minutes, so I'm going to jump right in, and I'm going to go through it quite quickly, but I can make these slides available to everyone if you would like to see them and look at them more carefully. Okay, so I will be discussing our work in Groundswell as it relates to agroforestry and ecosystem restoration. And I should just mention at the beginning, this is, Groundswell is a network in West Africa. You can see the logos of our partners there above. And we work in sort of with that the red big circle, our work is to promote a transition to agroecology, a transformation of the farming and food system. And we think there are about 12 million people farmers that live in that red circle across those 4 countries. So it's a sort of a common agroecological area. Now, there are many major problems in the area. You can see here the beginnings of land degradation and how people prepare their fields. Here's a more serious one, what I would consider to be inappropriate land clearing and soil preparation. But this used to be traditional because people used to fallow and they would move from field to field. And by the time they got back, they would, the trees would all be growing back again. But more and more there is no fallow as the main way to restore ecosystem services and trees and vegetation. And there's also the effect of climate change in that area. And many times we think about climate change in terms of drought or floods, but I would really emphasize the problem of rising temperatures. And there's a lot of research to show that for every degree of increased temperature, there is a decrease in crop yields because the heat thresholds of many crops, even millet and sorghum, is reduced for if it's too hot to grow. So that's a major problem. And now I'm going to talk about agroforestry, but before I do, I want to say that we don't see agroforestry as like a silver bullet. We see it as I would call it a foundational practice. I mean, in other words, you can't avoid it. In our view, it's necessary, but not sufficient for ecosystem restoration. So I'm going to go through all of them very quickly, but the main one I'm going to talk about later is about agroforestry, which you can see here, the beginnings of, and I'll get back to that slide. And then another part of our overall approach is soil and water conservation. Here we have micro water harvesting. You can see in the top left, when it rains, the water goes into those pockets. And this is land that was abandoned. It was not considered, you don't see any vegetation on it at all. And this is a way to rehabilitate land that's been completely abandoned through erosion. And you can see here how the water falls into those pockets and the crops start to grow even sooner than other crops. And here's another dimension of soil and water conservation, which is called rock buns along the contour, permeable rock buns. And you can see how it retains the water and lets it soak in rather than accelerate and erode more of the soil. And of course, this is a compost, but a special fast way of making compost. This is essential for the soil holding more water. And here is another way of making compost in compost pits. And then we also see that rotation, intercropping with legumes rather than monocropping is essential. And we really promote farmer managed seed systems and short cycle seeds. But the idea here is that is some sort of combination and sequencing of these 5 or 6 more what we call foundational new practices, including agroforestry. And now I'm going to get into the agroforestry part. So the main way that we promote, I mean, millions and millions of dollars have been spent on tree planting in the Sahel, and the vast majority of that has been wasted. It's a very challenging thing between fire, animals, drought. Trees that you plant don't grow. And so our preferred method, or the only method that we see as being effective, low cost, and manageable, is what we call farmer managed natural regeneration. And this is identifying and then maintaining and then protecting existing shrubs, and all those stumps you saw in those earlier pictures, they will, for the most part, regenerate if you leave them, and rather than trying to burn them. And here's what you have, what we call a vast underground forest. You can't see it, but there is a forest. If you see this sort of shrub here on the land in the Sahel, it means there's a big, deep root system underneath it. And as you see here, the idea is just to reduce all that bushes into 1 or 2, what do you call it, sprouts or whatever, to let it grow into a tree, and within a couple of years, it's a tree. So that's the approach. And here you can see the how it emerges in the field. And the idea is that you don't let a forest grow back into your croplands. That's not agroforestry, that's reforestation. So a lot of these trees, you have to prune them before the rainy season. You don't have to climb the tree, you can, like you see here, but you can prune them quite severely and they'll grow back quite quickly. So you produce firewood, you leave the leaves as a mulch, and you avoid competition with crops. And you can have a density of more than, in some of our plots, or some of our farmers have more than 200 trees per hectare in this way. Now, we're talking about ecosystem restoration. Here you have a picture that shows you what does that really mean in the context of the Sahel. These are 2 pictures. They're taken in and they're only 500 meters apart. They're taken the same day. And in one place, they practice FMNR. You can see what it looks like. On the other side, you see what the land looked like without FMNR. And there are thousands and thousands of these small-scale efforts being made. And this is what it looks like. If you look carefully, you can see the crops growing in this area. It looks like a forest, but they will have to prune those trees again, but they can grow crops in that, and it actually enhances crop production. I'm going to come to research that shows that in a moment. So this is what ideally what should look like and could look like, and not, I know it's not conducive for tractors if that's what you're using for land preparation, but this is the approach. Now here you have another example in Senegal. The trees that you see there that look white, they are Faidabria albida. They are a type of tree that lose their leaves during the rainy season, so they don't generate competition with crops. And the leaves that fall add as fertilizer or green manure. They're a leguminous type of tree. And you can see the beginnings of spread. I mean, for us, the holy grail, if I could use that term, is for it to be spontaneously spreading. And we see that happening in a few places where we've worked and other people have worked. Here's another example of how it's starting to spread from the year 1989 to 2010, I think. And here we have someone from a geological satellite survey took satellite photos, and they produced this map to show where agroforestry and through FMNR is spreading. And it's the same countries where we work, Mali, Burkina Faso. We don't work in Niger. And you can see Ghana, it's not anything there yet, but we're working on that. We've introduced that to a number of places to build on the experiences of those other countries where this type of agroforestry is going
Maybe
on. And
Peter,
yeah,
I just wanted to find out. Yes, yes. I just wanted to find out if that has got a specific type of species and also soil texture. Maybe, or you can just grow anywhere, anyhow. Let me just find out from that.
well, there are many different types of soil, but most of the soil is quite, decomposed laterite and more sandy soil. It's not that's the type of soil type that we have across the Sahel. But of course, you have low-lying areas which are heavier in soil. But I only have 15 minutes, so I'm going to have to wait for questions to come later. If you don't mind, I'll go on. But I tried to answer
No
your
problem,
question.
no problem. You can go ahead. That means I will respond. I will respond later. No problem.
Okay. So
Yeah.
I just want to mention that there are other places that are agroforestry. This is in Malawi. But there, it's not FMNR. It's like planting these Gliricidia trees, intercropping them, alley cropping. But here in Tanzania, I don't work there, but there's also Fiderbia. So there's also starting to spread there, and Ethiopia as well, this approach. And here we have some research that shows with FMNR and without FMNR, this is done in Senegal. And you can see the difference in terms of kilograms per hectare of grain, usually millet and sorghum. So you can see almost doubling the yield. And here you see, and people think that, oh, trees are like a big weed in the field. I can't have trees, it'll compete. Well, if you manage them properly, it's possible to increase yields with trees, as well as having the the ecosystem restoration benefits. So you see here, the first one, no trees, what the level of grain yield per hectare is. And then you see up to having 200 trees, how the yield can increase if it's managed properly. And this farmer is carrying millet. Now, why does this happen? Well, the first thing is that I mentioned temperature. Now you can see up in the left hand and the right hand corner what the temperature is. It's 45 degrees Celsius. I don't know if it gets that hot in your countries. It gets to about 40, 41 where I am in Ghana for a couple of months of the year. But if you look at the surface temperature on the soil, because of reflection and all that, it can be up to 71 degrees Celsius. And that's not conducive to seed germination. And then if you look under the tree where there's shade, you can see some reduction as well in the temperature from 35 to 36 up to 35. So the trees do have this capacity to reduce the heat stress on plants. And you can see the crops are doing better underneath the tree. Here you can see the crops are doing better under the tree. Here you see the crops doing better under the tree. Now it's a combination of things. It's the mulch, and it's also the shade. But then also there's something that you might not be aware of, is that trees have something called bioirrigation. This is a nighttime hydraulic redistribution. The water, for a number of reasons, which are, I won't try to explain, flow up into the ground from the tree roots, which are really deep and help provide moisture to the crops. So you can see that as another benefit, and you can see it here. So there are a number of benefits. We've done some research that shows how much people can increase their income. Crop yields have increased in another place in Ghana, 86% as trees grow after 5 years in the fields. And those farmers that practice FMNR usually are more food secure and climate resilient than non-FMNR farmers, according to our research that's been done by external research. But there's more. Because you have to trim those trees, I know that's quite a bit of work, but then the women don't have to go to the bush and cut down trees for firewood. And here you can see a woman, trimming the trees and the wood that they get from the pruning. And here you see the pruned field and the bushes left on the field, and the women carrying this wood back to their houses. And that prevents the women from, having to walk further and further into the bush to cut trees for firewood. They get it from their own fields on their farms. And usually their husbands do the pruning and they just come and collect it. So I just want to say that this approach is not, it's low cost. Once you explain it, what we really try to promote is farmer to farmer learning and exchange. The farmer leaders who are doing it, they talk about it, they take farmers to see it. And we also do community to community learning and exchange so farmers can, so communities that are doing well with this approach can help other communities get started with it. And farmer leaders that we train in local language, farmers always learn best from other farmers. That's always been our experience, rather than from technical, government extension workers. So here you see how we do that. And in terms of groundswell, we also do advocacy. Here's a situation that we did in Ghana. We tried to do a mapping of all the, what we call the evergreening hotspots all through the country. We had to pay someone to go and collect that information. We then try to bring them together to network. And then we do policy analysis. What are the policies and programs that work against FMNR or agroforestry, against evergreening? And that is tree tenure and land tenure and other environmental regulations. And then we try to promote across each and create hubs and then have them spread out from each of those hotspot areas. So that's my presentation. I went through it quickly. Anyone who is interested in learning more, I'm available. Leonard will give you my email, and I can also share this presentation. Thank you for your attention.
Wow, thank you so much, Peter. I think that was really insightful, and I hope maybe people has questions and comments, but because that one was really interesting. Oh, Lucky, back to you now. So what do you have for us today?
Okay, thank you so much, Peter, for that amazing presentation. Let me try to share my screen. Good. My name is Lucky Mukasa, and I'm a Ugandan, currently in Uganda, and I've been working with agroforestry for the past 6 years. The type of agroforestry I'm going to talk about is different from FMNR. It is called regenerative agroforestry. I work under an organization called Agroforestry Promotion Network, where we help set up training centers around Africa and Asia. Currently, we have one running in Nigeria, Malawi, Uganda, Tanzania is in the build-up, Namibia in the build-up, and then we have one running in India, in the north part of India, in the desert area called Rajasthan. And you can access our website when you check it. I think this is one everybody knows. We try to, when we talk about agroforestry, is basically trying to combine the principles of a forest, trying to incorporate the agricultural norms we do, both livestock and crops together. But here we have to include to mimic how a forest works. So with the regenerative agroforestry, we are basically mimicking the natural processes of a forest. That is the water, the carbon, and the nutrient cycles. Usually I ask people, who irrigates a forest? Who fertilizes the forest? But the forest is the last part, I think is the last ecosystem to really feel the intensity of the drought when it happens, because it has a fully functional ecosystem. So what we do with regenerative agroforestry, we try to mimic, just to mimic and assist our farm ecosystems to operate without this interference. I want to set the timer. Okay, good. So because I have only 15 minutes, I'm just going to highlight you the principles we follow and then the designing criteria we follow in our regenerative agroforestry projects. The first one is biodiversity. And here, I just want to tell you that all the photos I'm going to use in this presentation are basically from my farm, and a farm of a project in Uganda that I'm working with. So all the photos you are going to see are basically from this. So these are things we are doing. So this one, you see, when you talk of diversity, a forest, one of its main principle that helps it survive is the high diversity that it works with. And just from this photo, you can see that we have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11 various plants at this stage when the photo was taken. But there were a lot of other plants which were harvested in the low strata, which you can't even see right now. Like the beans, we had beans, we had chilies, all these were harvested. But you can still see the diversity of how a forest is working. The second principle is densification and accumulation. As I told you, look at a forest. Look at it as your benchmark and your reference. So here, when we talk of densification, is planting a lot of things together. Never fear to densify, because the more you densify, science proves that all these different plants with their rhizosphere and the root network, they attract various types of microlife. So the more diversified system you have, the more microbiome you have. That is scientifically proven. When you read in all research papers, you find that. And I will really believe that this is one of the principles that really help a forest to function. And the more densified system you have, the more root network you have, the more water penetration or holding capacity you have, the easier you are going to have more carbon sequestration, all this coming from densification. And two, why we don't fear to densify, because the system always eliminates what it thinks is not its time. As we will see, it's called succession. So every plant has its specific time to survive in the system. What you do as a farmer, you usually just assist the system to speed up this succession stage. So this is something we teach farmers to do. This type of farming has been in existence for years. People who know the tropics, if anyone is from Uganda, I tell you honestly, you go and visit your grandfather's farms, or if you remember, these farms had all these combinations together. Would go to a farm and you get the coffee, you get the bananas, you get the cocoa yams, find these fig trees, you find nitrogen fixing plants in there. Currently, we are all just shifting to monoculture. And what happens? Our soils are just getting bad and bad. But here, soils we are getting better. People never used fertilizers just because of all this. They were producing a lot, but again, they were putting back a lot in the system. So this is one of the principles we follow. 3 is keeping the soil covered, and the next one is permanent greenery or photosynthesis. So in this aspect, we believe that in this system, as I told you, we benchmark a forest. Look at a forest. Nobody takes their mulching material, but you always find the soil mulched. But I've never seen anybody carry a truck of mulching material to go and mulch a forest. Everything comes from the forest. So usually, in our designing of these systems, we make sure we identify these biomass plants, which are going to basically give us the mulching material. In this photo, you will see I have a line of Napier grass. And in all my designs, I prefer using Napier grass because it produces huge amounts of biomass. And 2, it's very easy to work with. And there are various grasses depending on your situations. So these ones are basically from Uganda. But all your areas have different grasses. You will see Brazil is using a lot of Bracharia, Latin America, using a lot of Bracharia varieties. I was in India and we introduced Napier. It is working perfectly. You go to some areas, you find they are using Synchros. So grasses play a key role because they accumulate biomass at a very fast rate. So they can easily produce for you your mulching material on the spot. On the spot. You don't need to carry things out. 2, we have a lot of biomass plants. Like in the photo, you can see we have castor, we have Glycidia, the one directly straight to you. That one you can always prune, chop and drop. Peter was talking about pruning. Pruning is the key, even in the forest. They are able to mulch because they are pruning. Nobody prunes, the wind prunes, the monkeys prune, the birds prune. But here, you as a human being, your job is just to speed up the process by pruning. In a forest, it can take it years. But here, you can do this speed up and you achieve your healthy soil in just 2-3 years when your soil has been healed, because you are the steward of the system. When to go, the next principle we'll follow is usually natural pest control. So here in natural pest control, we try to add in a lot of plants which we call aromatic plants and plants with medicinal properties. We believe from experience, not scientifically proven, but you'll agree with me that I think our assumption is right, because we believe whatever is medicinal to you is medicinal to the soil, is medicinal to the plants, because we are all in the same food value chain. We are all in the same food value chain, from the microbes to the plants, to the animals, to you, the humans, to the bigger animals. We are all the same. So whatever is medicinal to the small microbes is medicinal to the plants, medicinal to the animals, medicinal to you. I prove this because I have goats, and these goats are always eating, at specific times you find them eating bitter leaf. Bitter leaf is good for us because we use it for medicine against various things. But this goat will eat bitter leaf only when it feels something is not right in its system and wants to balance. So when we are designing our systems, we try to add as much aromatic plants as possible. Here you will see marigolds, you see turmeric, you will see onions, we have mint, rosemary. We try to add all this. So they are doing a natural pest control or healing process. At the same time, you can harvest them and sell for some money, for oils, for spices and herbs. So this is how you can easily integrate all these plants. And most of these plants actually are shade-loving plants. So they can always be your understory, as we will see in the coming slides. And then the next one is succession. Succession is the growth of the system with time. So this is my farm. And a few months ago, I was just harvesting a eucalyptus tree. That one I'm holding is a eucalyptus tree, 2.5 years old. I was using it to build the goat structure. But initially, you could even not see it when it was young. When you would come in this system in 2 months, you would only see maize, because I had maize everywhere and beans. But 2 years later, this is how the farm looks like. So you can see how fast the development can go. And with succession, some things will disappear in the system. That's okay. Why is it supposed to be like this? Because their role in the system is done. Their role is to prepare the ground for the next plants to occupy that space. So succession, when some plant dies out of your system, that's okay. This eucalyptus, I cut it out, it's going to resprout. I can still maintain it to grow if it has space, or I can keep it as biomass, or I can leave it to go out of the system, depending on how I had designed it. So that's what we call succession. So usually succession is our fourth parameter. People usually consider the normal monoculture systems, they work with the X, Y, but for us we have the Z, the X, Y, and Z, but for us the fourth parameter is the time, which usually is not guaranteed. I'll use the same photo to explain the next principle, which is stratification. I told you, look at the forest as your benchmark. if your forest is a benchmark, you'll find trees from the highest to the lowest, all spaces covered, and all plants happily surviving and thriving. Why? Because each of these plants occupies its space it needs in the system, that it can get its requirements. And usually the requirements are two, actually not two, but usually we categorize them into two parts, above the ground and below the ground. So above the ground is basically light, carbon dioxide. Below the ground, water, nutrients. When you check this is something I really want to do and at least have a photo, because I haven't seen it clearly. If you can do a land diagram down below the ground of an agroforestry system line, and you see the arrangement of these roots, we know there are some photos mimicking that, but we are yet to get real action. I haven't yet seen a real actual photo, but we know it happens because the root of a eucalyptus is completely different from the root of a coffee, because you see a coffee is just 50 cm to the eucalyptus, and then it is around 1 meter away from the banana, but all of them have no problem because they have the roots are different levels, so they are not competing anyway, because they are all getting nutrients from various levels. They will be competing if you put plants of the same needs together, same root structure, same structure, then that would be competition, because they are basically fighting within the same area. So you have usually the emergent strata, which goes up high. Then we have the high strata, we have the medium strata, we have the low strata, and we have the understory. The lower you go, the more shade-loving plants you have to choose, because all these emergent strata plants and high, they have a high light requirements. So all these comes in our trainings, and we explain to farmers how these things function. So the next, because of time, I will now go to the designing criteria. So in designing criteria, we basically look at human needs and nature needs. Our system solves these two needs. Human needs, what do you as a farmer or a client need? You need food, fodder, commercial, medicine, woodlot, fiber, water. Choose. What do you need? Then nature needs. This is where most people forget. They don't, because humans, we are so greedy that we just focus on what we need. And we forget that nature, to provide you that, you have to feed it. Nitrogen fixation, biomass production, stratification, biodiversity, and all this. So all these, you have to include them in your designs so that you can get your human needs you need. So I'll just show you some simple examples we have. So this is a system for vegetables. You can also plant annual crops. You can plant fodder in these systems. So here we have a densified nitrogen fixing line in the middle, planted every 50 cm. We have trees like Lucina, Glycidia, Caliandra, and these plants serve two needs, two functions. One, nitrogen fixation and biomass. Two, firewood for the farmer. Because we chop this one down, as you see, which we call copicing, at the onset of the rainy season. Chop it completely down. Then harvest your firewood, take it home. Because the farmer needs firewood in the rainy season, not in the dry season. Basically in the rainy season when it is hard to get. In the rainy season, they can get it everywhere. So now you leave the greenery and all the ramio wood, mulching material, biomass. Then plant your annual crops, vegetables, maize, beans, all your various annual crops. Plant them. And then by the time the plants grow, this middle line is also growing. But at the same time, we have big tree lines at a spacing of 9, 12 meters, even 15 meters, depending on what you want. If you want more annual crops, or if you want a reasonable number of annual crops and food trees, all fruit trees. The second one, you see, in vegetables, you have to include the Forgot to forget the principles, feeder plants, even annual we have some beans, natural pest control. You see we had a lot of marigolds and onions and all these aromatic plants. The next one is a school garden agroforestry system. Most of the school gardens we see are basically growing vegetables. For us, we go beyond that. We design a system where kids are able, we put plants with high impact. Look at that papaya plant. How many kids can it feed in a school? One banana, how many kids can they feed in a school? Then pineapples, you see them in the systems. And in this system, you can also plant some vegetables which you really love shade, which can survive in the shade. So we design systems according to the needs they solve. But I told you, we always think about nature too. And in that perspective, when you look at the first photo, you see a lot of green plants in. Like Glycidia, Lucina, those are all feeder plants. And this one is a homestead or subsistence agroforestry system, where the farmer needs his food, but he also needs some money. This is what our farmers in Uganda need. This is my farm. So here I have coffee and bananas. We eat a lot of bananas here, by the way, but I sell some. And coffee is my main commercial crop I'm waiting for. Pineapples, you can see them there, and then you design it accordingly. Cassava, all these things you can have. Then systems for animals. Here you can design a system of cut and carry. You can also design a system where you're going to feed the animals in. This is my farm, and there we just harvested 40 tons of napier grass as we made silage. That's for our animals. But you can also do cut and carry where you just chop and bring for your animals. And you don't have to hassle with your neighbors, because in Africa, that's an issue. When you have animals, you have no neighbor who's your friend, because you always be in wrangles. And then we have a commercial system. This is also my farm, where I basically plant bananas and coffee and pineapples. So this is now for money. And in this system, you can see it is a 4-meter system, tree line, 4 lines of pineapples, and then you have 625 bananas per hectare, 625 coffee per hectare, 25,000 pineapples, and turmeric, ginger, we are yet to densify where you see the beans currently. And then you have 36 timber trees, which my grandchildren will cut. That's not mine. But the coffee and bananas and pineapples, those are mine. So finally, this is a training center where I told you we solve people's needs or specific needs of the farmer. So here we have 80 designs we have put on ground, and we use this one as our training center. And we are having a training I'll show you coming in August. But these designs are solving the needs of the farmer. And we put them all on ground to show the farmer. The farmer comes down and he sees them and he says, I want this. I think I can do this. I think this is practical for what I want to do. This was the start just in 2023. And this is how it looks like just in 2025. Just in 2 years, actually yet to be 2 years, because it was August and now we are in July. You can see how fast the transformation can happen when you work with agroforestry in the right way. And finally, that's our training coming on just in 3 weeks. Thank you so much, Leonard. I was a bit late with around some few minutes, but yeah, thank you.
But it's okay. Yeah, I think I couldn't find a way to stop you. Thank you so much. This is perfect, and I was really interested to hear more. Oh my God, thank you so much, all Lucky and Peter, for amazing presentations. I hope we learned a lot. That was a very nice school and courses. Without talking more, I think the audience has many things to say. As I can see, they were very interesting. I would like to see if we have people with questions. Maybe I can see John first. Others will raise hands and then you tell us. Yes, John.
First, I just want to say that Leonard and Peter and Lucky, that was a brilliant session. Those were perfect presentations. And just blown away. Just very, very good. Thank you very much. So these are two very different techniques. The FMNR was really inspirational and can be done, I would imagine, could also be done in the context of what Lucky does. I find myself wondering whether underneath a sharecropper's existing field, there may well be tree root systems that have already proven that they're well adapted to the local situation. I'm wondering whether one can use existing trees and use them to get a head start in the kind of process that Lucky does as well.
Should we answer direct or?
Well, I can take a first stab, Lucky.
Yes.
Lucky,
So-
could you stop the screen share, please?
Yeah, so that we can see people. Okay.
So while Lucky is doing that, John, that's a very good question. In the Sahel is a very different context to Uganda. I've been to Uganda. It's we consider that paradise in terms of the soil and the climate. I'm not saying it's easy there either, but the Sahel is a very challenging place. And the main thing is to get some trees into the field in the way that I described. And then we have a second, sort of round, if you will, after a few years of FMNR plus. And then you encourage farmers to look for trees that have more benefits. We have local fruit trees, the baobab, and we have the tamarind, and then we have the shea. And those trees are usually quite, more commercial. And then we can introduce honey production and medicinal types of things. But, we can't grow coffee, or we can't grow pineapple, or many of the crops that Lucky was talking about. But there are other types but the main principle is the same. You diversify. But the first thing is to get some trees into the field, like from, maybe many farmers have maybe only 10 or 20 trees, get it up to 200 in the way that I was mentioning, or if that's too many, then at least 120. And all types of trees that are the underground forest can come up. If some trees are not to the satisfaction of the farmer, they can leave those out and just let those ones grow that he sees a benefit in. But then you can diversify from there, but that's a longer term process. But I'll leave Lucky talk about his context, but that's what we're trying to do in the Sahel.
Yes, thank you. Let me rephrase my question for Lucky. Lucky, we're pursuing a project in Panama where we have a 1 hectare pineapple plantation. It's rows and rows of monoculture pineapple on bare soil. We suspect, and I'm sure you suspect, that you could have more and better pineapples and lots of other things if we did what you're talking about, which is to introduce trees and bananas and all sorts of plants among the pineapples. So I'm wondering if you have a strategy for saying, okay, you've got a farmer who's already doing a lot of pineapple work, but we can enrich and diversify. And perhaps, this was my question for Peter, figure out what existing trees lie underneath those pineapple rows that could be used to accelerate the process of diversifying the monoculture pineapple grove and turning it into a multiculture, primarily pineapple site.
Okay, thank you so much, John. First of all, I will tell you honestly that when we are designing the systems, we always give priority to the indigenous existing systems, existing trees. And these trees can be mature trees or can be rootstocks, which are still existing. As Peter said, the easiest way to restart the system or accelerate it is by using these existing root structures, because they will grow faster and they already have adapted root network. But what we do in our systems, basically, if it is only rootstocks, we first design our tree lines where we want them to pass. And then all these rootstocks which are within those lines, all just proximity to the lines, we leave them and just play around with them. But the ones which might be in between, because we want to ease the management and to play around with the light, we terminate them. And then we introduce in more plants. There are some trees, one thing which is funny is most of these biomass plants or the nitrogen fixing plants, these are hardy plants. All people doing agroforestry will agree with me. These are very hardy plants which survive in most of these areas. And even in the driest part of the areas I've visited, most of these existing trees in there are all leguminous plants. Most of them are leguminous plants. The acacias, you'll find them really almost everywhere. Glycidia, you'll find it almost everywhere. Leucaena, everywhere. So you just have to know, how do I incorporate them in the system, depending on the design you want to do. Let me hope I've answered your question, John.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Lucky. I think maybe we can jump in the chat a bit before I go to Michael's question. I think, Peter, they asked you a question from Christian from Forest of Hope in Gishwati. He said, please, can you explain more about FML to me, because he's reading and managing a restoration project in Rwanda, Gishwati Mukura National Park. Maybe you can talk about it.
I hope I gave the outlines of FMNR in 15 minutes. You can't do a lot, but if you just go to Wikipedia, there is an entry, a very good one in my view, on FMNR that really highlights it and provides more resources. And there are a number of organizations that are promoting FMNR. All those sites that I showed you in my slides, it's not all groundswell by any means, but we are, among the leaders in promoting it. And there is something called the FMNR Hub. I don't quite have the website available, but if you look FMNR Hub, you should get technical resources, training manuals, and so on. And it has to be adapted to each context. And I really want to stress, it's farmer managed. So it's not like a very rigid system. It's managed by the farmer. What trees does he want? Which trees does he not want? Which ones, like Lucky was saying, you can, if you want to have something that's more in rows, then you leave space in the middle and just try to look for the rootstock that's sort of more or less in line. There are all sorts of ways you can adapt it to your circumstance. So I would advise you to look for those resources if you really want to learn more about FMNR. But I really find in the drylands in particular, it's essential, because so many millions, and I would say even billions of dollars through the Great Green Wall for the Sahel and the AFR 100 commitments to restore 100 million hectares are using tree planting, and that is expensive. It is okay. If I go on it doesn't. It's clearly that it doesn't work as well as FMNR. But the tree, the people that are promoting these other systems, they they say, well, it's en français on dit anarchique. It's the trees are growing everywhere, and well, yes, but well, there's some trade-offs. But for the most handhold farmers, it's really the way to go to even begin to restore your reverse land degradation.
Thanks. Maybe before we go to Michael, I want to pose a question to Lucky. but he will answer after Michael's question, because I've seen the chat people are questioning about eucalyptus, the one you said you mixed. So even in Rwanda, I think it's really worse. It's exotic, and people don't believe in just use it as agroforestry. And I also saying to be having their leaves, which are may containing more acidic acids. So what do you think, what is your tips, while selecting agroforestry trees to mix with your backyard and plants? So you are going to think about this. Michael, the floor is yours.
Hi, this is probably mainly directed at Peter, but it's for the whole group. In my presentation on medicinal plants recently, I said that agroforestry was the most important thing for agriculture research in Africa, because the more trees, the cooler the climate will get. And we know that we need to cool a lot of the Africa. And the more trees, also the more rain. I believe that's true, might be a little harder to prove. So very important work. I really like Peter's slide where he showed the extent where FMNR is working with those green areas, and I would like to see a similar map that shows where agroforestry is really being taken up on a larger scale around Africa. So it's almost like there's two maps, or there could even be three maps. One is FMNR working. Two is where is agroforestry taking hold. And three, where are the remaining traditional agroforestry systems? Because Africa had a lot of traditional agroforestry systems, but most of them are gone, most likely. I would like to see those maps. And so since Peter was in charge, I assume, of the budget that mapped where Ghana was having agroforestry uptake, what would it cost to map all of Africa and the agroforestry? Since you did it for Ghana, we could extrapolate from that to know what would it cost to do a more Africa-wide or country-by-country survey. That's something I think that would be really useful to us. And so maybe just Peter might say a couple words towards that.
Okay, there's a lot to unpack there. I should say that there's something called parkland in Africa, West Africa. I'll speak to West Africa, and that is, when they originally cleared the land, they left the shade trees, they left the tamarind, they left the baobab, they left the more economical trees, and they are tending to die out because they don't allow other trees to grow. So this is an enhanced, improved, innovative way of taking a traditional practice, the FMNR, and making it work in a way that, rather than cutting all those trees like I showed in the earlier slides and burning them, you let them, a lot of them grow. So it is an enhanced way of the traditional method, because before it used to be just fallowing and coming back. The second thing is that most of those maps I showed you are not done, but they're for satellite images, and Groundswell doesn't do that. We don't commission it, but we look for it. And I think the U.S. Geological Survey, the fellow who I work with a lot is Tappan Gray, and he can provide, I think, constructed that map with the green, because we are trying to promote and convince policymakers about FMNR, and we work together to construct some of those maps and show the before and after pictures over time. So I can try to get you in touch with Tappan Gray, and it's already there. The U.S., I've forgotten the exact name, geological something, and he is an expert in conducing those maps. And then there's another map there, which is just a mapping. We just went out and hired a consultant and say, now, what are all the areas across Ghana that are doing some shape or form of agroecology and agroforestry? And that's the map I showed you in the last slide. And can we bring them together? Can we exchange experiences? What's working, what's not working? What's working in one type of agroecological area and maybe not in another? And how can we try to support you, not just to learn from each other, to expand. I have a scaling out strategy. What are the policies that we need to change so you get much wider spread? And it's never going to be. And then the final point I want to make is that agroforestry is not spreading, in my view. One of the main reasons, there are many, but is that there isn't a dedicated ministry to it. There's either the forestry department on the one hand, and they look at forests, that's their mandate, and then you have the agricultural side, and that's the Ministry of Agriculture on the other side. And they just see agroforestry, plant some fruit trees, plant some mangoes, and that's it. Not the type of robust, a strong agroforestry system, tree-based farming systems that both Lucky and I showed you. And so agroforestry falls between two stools, and there isn't sort of a strong institutional basis on which to promote agroforestry. And there's also issues around land tenure and tree tenure and all of that, but I won't get into that. But there are a number of barriers. You need to identify those barriers and then bring people together in that movement, social movement idea, and try to eliminate those barriers as best you can if you want to see it spread. And that is the key thing, is that there never be enough agents to do this farmer to farmer to farmer to farmer. We need farmers to teach each other and communities to teach each other. So it's almost becoming self-spreading to a large measure. And how can you catalyze that? That's what we are trying to do. So I'll stop. I can go on, but I hope I've answered your question, Michael.
Thanks, Peter. Yeah, Lucky, are you ready to go? And what Peter was saying, I think it's true that sometimes we need to know what is working in certain regions. Like, I think Ananda should testify that, like, when we were in Uganda, we've seen different types of biomass and regions. When you go to Jinja and then we go to Nakivari, we've seen different things and how, like, Edward is transforming things. I think Maya should be here before, but yeah, we still share anyways. Yeah,
Brendan.
Okay, thank you so much, Peter. Actually, when it comes to FMNR, we previously had a meeting with World Vision, and we are starting a strategy in Malawi to try to see how we can incorporate FMNR in our systems, because they are really those bad areas which are really degraded. And you just have to first work with those rootstocks to heal the soil, and then create biomass and start the systems. That, I'm sure it will work out. The only challenge usually we have with these original rootstocks is they are slow-growing plants. Most of them are a bit slow-growing plants. Some of them might be fast-growing. So just identifying the right plants, as Peter said, is a key. Coming back to the question of eucalyptus, I tell you honestly, that's a question. If I leave a presentation when I've not got it, then I know people are not following me. So I'm always happy when I get that question. Eucalyptus grown on monoculture is the worst plant you can ever have. Eucalyptus grown in an agroforestry system, well-designed, densified agroforestry system, will be the best plant you have in your system. I talk this from experience because, one, eucalyptus has this perfect root structure which we call the hydraulic lift system. Very few plants have that capacity or that structure. Other examples are pigeon peas. There are some plants, but this is the structure I'm talking about. They have a taproot system. If only grown before they are cut, because most of these guys, the plant nurseries, have a tendency of cutting the taproot. So when you plant it when the taproot is still on, you have the taproot, and it also has a very strong fibrous root structure. That is the eucalyptus. So this is what happens. When you plant it close together, only alone, it will of course have this root structures come together. What happens after? It creates a hard pan, like a compound where nothing can grow. Even in Uganda, when you check these monoculture eucalyptus tree farms, which were planted in this way, you find nothing in the understory. But just happen if you have had some tours in forests. And in some of these natural ecosystems, there are usually these specific lonely eucalyptus plants you find in there. And immediately, just an inch away from the big trunk of eucalyptus, you find plants growing down there, happily growing. I'm just talking to people who have visited these trees, who have seen them in a natural ecosystem. Why? Because when it was growing together with other plants around it. And these roots, which were supposed to come and occupy the top layer, they are now forced to go down because this space is already occupied by the fast growing plants. So if the roots come and they find that the layer is occupied, what do? They will just push themselves down, creating this soil, this layer of soil up for you, where you can easily plant anything. So when you are working with eucalyptus, you are supposed to plant it in a combination, which we call a consortium. What they start when you are planting it, such that the top level is occupied by fast growing roots. You can use tubers, are very good, cassava, potatoes. They have maize, very good to occupy that row. Then the roots will just go down. Two, what we usually do in these systems, why I like eucalyptus, is because eucalyptus grows so fast and can give you straight wood, firewood, even timber, construction poles. It's really a plant that solves your problems when you know how to work with it. But the moment you plant it monoculture, my friend, you have your problems. I'm not talking about monoculture. I'm in regenerative agroforestry. And then two, it has that tendency of absorbing water and sharing with the neighbors during the dry season. Most of the plants which have that capacity of having a tap root and then having a fibrous root network, they have that capacity of sharing water during the night. Usually when you go around these plants, especially if you combine them with grasses and C4 plants, you will be shocked that in the morning of in a hottest area, you'll find dew around these plants at the lower level. So this is very common with these plants. Always identify plants with, always identify these plants which have the taproot and also the fibrous root network. Thank you so much.
Brendan, don't leave.
No, I was just waving at Benamara.
Okay.
Yeah, and I've seen Brenda put something in the chat about that he didn't, like, in the past he didn't know that we need to feed nature as well. So Brenda, maybe you have a question or comment.
I just wanted to say thank you to Lucky for that explanation. I grew up in Southern California where the eucalyptus have taken over. There was a businessman around the turn of the 20th century that planted huge plantations of them, all monocrop, and for lumber, because they were quick growing. They ended up being useless for that purpose, so they just took over. But that's generally thought of. So, like, I appreciate being reversed on my internal demonization of a whole category of species, you know, and seeing how it's kind of like cows, but it's not the cow, it's the how. You know, people blame the cow, but actually they don't know about them in a context of a rotational grazing system. So my question to either Peter and or Lucky, or both, or either, I understand FMNR is not necessarily the same as, well, so it's got unique properties. And you wouldn't want to just go digging around and dig up any roots. But I was wondering about the place of hardscaping or earthscaping, basins, eye holes, and like stone lines in the context of these systems. I noticed at least one picture that had the basins, but obviously you don't want to start that from scratch. I just wondered if there's any point in that system where you want to enhance the land to reduce erosion, or reduce the exposure of the elements, like that when you're in the initial stages.
Yeah, I can reply to that. There are many fields that have been so cultivated so long, and there's been so much sheet erosion that it's just like a hard pan, and nothing is growing anymore. Is there a somebody's anyway? And that land has been abandoned, Brendan. And there is where this microsystem, micro harvesting with the eye holes, basins, actually you turn a useless piece of land into one of your more productive land, because it's like pavement in between, you know, and then when you dig through that crust and you put in some little bit of compost and then your seed, no weeds grow in between, and the crop grows up faster. Because what you do is you multiply the amount of water that falls. If it falls like 1 inch, you multiply it times 5, right? Because the water collects from the hard pan. And then you gradually rehabilitate that whole field that's been abandoned. And then you can start to introduce trees like those, you know, those eye holes. You can make half moons. Half moons, then you can plant a tree. So you can rehabilitate it more slowly, but that's how you, and then you also have the rock buns I showed you. So absolutely, it just depends on what type of field. If you're almost all your rootstock is gone, then you have to do something else, right? But if your rootstock is still there in the way that I showed you, then you can do, you know, you can get more directly into the agroforestry FMNR type of work. So that's why I mentioned at the beginning that I don't see agroforestry as like a silver bullet for ecosystem restoration. It is essential. It's part of what I call foundational, but you have to do other things as well. And the soil and water conservation is absolutely one of the other things. I only had 15 minutes, so I only sort of brushed through it, but it's a combination. And then with each community, what is the right sequence? What do you do first? What do you do second? It's participatory. So, you know, you give a range of options of how do you restore degraded land based on, you know, what's the situation in that particular farm or community. So I hope I've replied to your question, Brendan.
No, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah, maybe if I can add on Brendan's on Peter's suggestions towards Brendan's question. You see, for us, when we are designing the systems, we usually follow the first question to ask yourself on a piece of land is, where does the sun come from and go? And 2, how does your water move on your land? So if your land is too steep, then you have to incorporate in these water retention measures. Because as a farmer, you need that water in the soil, not running on top of the soil. You want to reduce its velocity as much as possible. That is if it is steep. If the land is not so steep, we can work with grasses, because digging trenches is a bit expensive and hard work. But if there is a possibility of working with grasses, we work with grasses, vetiver grass, Napier grass. Those are really very good grasses to do the water capture and penetration. So that is how. And also with the tree lines, we always align our tree lines not along the slope, but against the slope, perpendicular to the flow of water. That's how you design your farm. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. That was thoughtful. And I'm sorry, you all, we used your 2 minutes. So I don't know if anyone has a question, but we are on top of time. So we are free now to go. But thank you so much for participating, for joining. And remember that this is a bi-weekly series that we have another one in 2 weeks. So keep your eyes on our socials and communication channels.
Let me say again to a number of people came late. And if you missed these presentations, they were really good. If you put your email into the chat, Leonard or Brendan, you two should coordinate, will send you the recordings. They are the presentations. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, sure.
Just let me say that to Lucky, wow, that was, when I saw your pictures, I was so impressed. I just wish you could come over to my farm and help me get the similar type of biodiversity going. Although it's a bit more challenging, I think your farm might be a bit easier with the rainfall and soil. But it was amazing, and thanks for presenting that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Peter. That was really good because my first project in my life was in 2020, and it was in Nigeria, in the northern part of Nigeria called Kaduna. So I know what you're talking about, and
Kaduna. If you just go across, that's where I am in Ghana. You know, the same sort of zone. Anyway, this is not a place for us to communicate back and forth. So thanks to everyone for listening. And as John has mentioned, it'll be available for anyone who wants to access the recording.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Any other last note from anyone? I think
I just want to thank everybody, and thank you for joining. And it is a honor, and thanks to Ecosystem Restoration for giving me this opportunity to share my work and with the people. Thank you so much, and let's continue regenerating our systems.
Yeah, it is a pleasure having you, and Ecorestoration Alliance is a home. Just no need to say thank you. It's our home. So yeah, thank you, John and Ananda, for the platform. So bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Bye-bye.